Ambassador Velketh stood alone in the archive chamber, his 4 eyes scanning the holographic records that floated before him. The blue light from the displays made his gray skin look almost ghostly. He had come here to prepare for war. What he found instead was something that made his blood run cold. The Sirathi Dominion had decided to destroy humanity. The vote in the High Council had been easy. Humans were young, weak, and their territory sat right in the path of Sirathi expansion. It should have been simple. The Dominion commanded a fleet of 80,000 warships. The humans had barely 6,000. The math was clear, but Velketh was careful. He always did his research before any military campaign. So he had come to the Great Archive to study human military history. What he expected to find was a small collection of minor conflicts. What he actually found made him stop breathing. In 340 years of membership in the Galactic Concil, humanity had fought 17 sanctioned wars. They had won every single one. Velketh blinked all 4 eyes at once. That could not be right. He checked the records again. Then he checked them a 3rd time. The data did not change. 17 wars. 17 victories. Not a single loss. He told himself it meant nothing. Humans were lucky. They had fought weak enemies. They had allies who carried them to victory. There had to be an explanation. So he dug deeper. The first war had been against the Broken Moon Syndicate, a pirate fleet that terrorized 3 sectors. The humans destroyed them in 4 months. The second war had been against the Velhari Republic, a species that had been conquering worlds for 2,000 years. The humans beat them in 18 months and took back every colony the Velhari had stolen. Velketh kept reading. His hands began to shake. The Muldrani hegemony had attacked human space with a fleet of 30,000 ships. The hegemony had been one of the great powers of the galaxy for 500 years. The humans crushed them in 2 years. The Muldrani never recovered. Their civilization collapsed within a century. The Crystalline Accord had tried next. They were an ancient race, their technology far beyond anything humans possessed. The war lasted 3 years. At the end, the Crystalline Accord begged for peace and gave up half their territory. The Void Speakers, the Iron Covenant, the Children of the Black Star. Name after name, war after war. All of them ended the same way. Human victory, complete and total. Velketh stepped back from the displays. His heart was beating too fast. This was impossible. The humans were a young species. They had only been traveling between stars for 400 years. How could they defeat enemies that had been building empires for millennia? He searched for more details, but the records were strange. Important files were missing. Battle reports were incomplete. Some sections had been deleted entirely. It was almost as if someone wanted these wars to be forgotten. Velketh sat down heavily in his chair. He was starting to feel sick. His personal communicator buzzed. A message had arrived. There was no sender identification, which should have been impossible in the secure archive chamber. He opened it anyway. The message contained only text. Do not declare war on humanity. Ask the Conclave of Ashes what happened to the Threll. Velketh read the words 3 times. The Threll. He knew that name. Every educated being in the galaxy knew that name. The Threll had been one of the founding species of galactic civilization. 12,000 years ago, they had helped create the first treaties that allowed different species to live in peace. They had been wise, powerful, and respected by all. And then, they had vanished. No one knew what had happened to them. 1 century they were there, leading the galaxy toward a bright future. The next century they were gone. Their worlds were empty. Their fleets were dust. Their people had disappeared as if they had never existed. It was one of the great mysteries of galactic history. But what did the Threll have to do with humans? The humans had only discovered space travel 400 years ago. The Threll had vanished 12,000 years before that. There was no possible connection. Unless everything Velketh knew about humans was wrong. He stood up and began to pace. His mind was racing. The anonymous message had told him to ask the Conclave of Ashes. He knew of them, of course. Everyone did, though few had ever seen them. They were the oldest beings in the galaxy, members of species so ancient that they remembered the universe before most civilizations were born. They lived on a hidden world and rarely spoke to anyone, but they would speak to him. He was an ambassador of the Sirathi Dominion. He had the authority to demand an audience. Velketh looked back at the holographic records one more time. 17 wars, 17 victories. Entire civilizations brought to their knees by a species that should have been easy prey. What were the humans really? He thought about the war that was coming. 80,000 Sci-Fi warships against 6,000 human vessels. The numbers were overwhelming. Victory should be certain, but the Moldrani had been certain too. So had the Crystalline Accord. So had every other species that had ever raised weapons against humanity. All of them had been wrong. Velketh made his decision. He would go to the Conclave of Ashes. He would find the truth about the Threll. He would learn what humanity really was before the first shot was fired. But even as he made this decision, he knew it was probably too late. The High Council had already voted. The war fleets were already moving. In 3 standard weeks, the Sirathi Dominion would attack human space. Nothing could stop what was coming. Velketh walked out of the archive chamber and into the corridor beyond. The metal walls felt cold around him. The light seemed dimmer than before. He had come to the archives looking for weakness. He had found something else instead. Something that made him afraid in a way he had never been afraid before. 17 wars. 17 victories. Somewhere in the darkness of space, 6,000 human warships were waiting. And for the first time in his life, Velketh wondered if 80,000 would be enough. He thought about the message on his communicator. The Threll had been powerful beyond measure. They had commanded fleets that darkened the stars. They had ruled 100 worlds. And now they were gone. Erased from existence. Forgotten by history. Ask the Conclave of Ashes what happened to the Threll. Velketh walked faster. He needed to find answers. He needed to understand what the Sirathi Dominion was about to face. Because deep in his heart, in a place he did not want to look, he already knew the truth. The humans were not what they appeared to be. They never had been. And by the time the galaxy understood what humanity really was, it was always too late. The corridor stretched on before him, long and dark and cold. Somewhere far away, the war fleets were gathering. Soldiers were saying goodbye to their families. Commanders were making plans for victory. None of them knew what Velketh now suspected. They were not about to fight a war. They were about to learn why humanity had never lost one. The war began exactly as the Sirathi High Council had predicted. Their massive fleets swept into human space like a storm of fire and metal. Border colonies fell one after another. Human defense stations burned in the void. The first 3 weeks were a parade of victory. Velketh watched the battle reports from his ship, the diplomatic vessel that had taken him away from the war zone. He should have felt relief. The humans were losing. Their small fleet could not stand against Sirathi numbers. Everything was going according to plan. But Velketh could not shake the feeling that something was wrong. He had failed to reach the Conclave of Ashes before the war started. His journey had been delayed by bureaucracy and bad luck. Now he was racing toward their hidden world while his people celebrated victories that felt hollow to him. Back in human space, Supreme Commander Thalvex stood on the bridge of his flagship and smiled. 10 human colonies had fallen. 300 human ships had been destroyed. The enemy was running. "They are weak," he announced to his officers. Just as we knew they would be. His officers agreed. The humans were nothing special. Their ships were smaller. Their weapons were weaker. Their numbers were pathetic. This war would be over in months. Then Admiral Nora Chen made her first move. She had been retreating for weeks, pulling her fleet back from every engagement. The Sirathi thought she was afraid. They thought she was buying time before the inevitable surrender. They were wrong. Chen had been watching, learning, studying every Sirathi tactic, every formation, every pattern of behavior. She had fed all of it into her computers and into her own brilliant mind, and now she understood her enemy better than they understood themselves. Her counterattack came without warning. The human fleet appeared from behind a gas giant where they had been hiding, but they did not attack the main Sirathi force. Instead, they struck the supply lines. In 6 hours, they destroyed 40 transport ships carrying fuel and ammunition. Then they vanished before the Sirathi warships could respond. Commander Thalvex was annoyed but not worried. It was a small victory for the humans. It meant nothing. 3 days later, Chen struck again. This time she hit a communication relay station. The Sirathi battle network went dark for 12 hours. During those 12 hours, 2 Sirathi patrol fleets received no orders. They held position and waited for instructions. The humans destroyed them both. Thalvex stopped smiling. Over the next month, the war changed. The humans stopped running. They stopped hiding. Instead, they adapted. Every Sirathi tactic that had worked in the first weeks suddenly stopped working. Every trap the Sirathi set was avoided. Every ambush they planned was turned against them. Velketh received reports on his journey to the Conclave. He read them with growing horror. The humans were learning too fast. No species could adapt this quickly. It was as if warfare came naturally to them, as if it was something they were born knowing how to do. He read one report about a ground battle on a colony world. The Sirathi had landed 50,000 soldiers. They had air support, heavy weapons, and complete control of the orbital space. Victory should have been easy. The humans had 8,000 defenders. They lost the battle, of course, but it took the Sirathi 3 months to win. And when it was over, 30,000 Sirathi soldiers were dead. 8,000 humans had killed 30,000 Sirathi before falling. The report included recordings from the battle. Velketh made himself watch them. He saw human soldiers fighting in conditions that should have broken them. He saw them laughing as enemy fire exploded around them. He saw wounded humans refusing to retreat, holding their positions until they bled out. He saw a human commander singing an old Earth song while his base burned around him. The humans were not afraid to die. They did not fight like beings who wanted to survive. They fought like beings who had made peace with death long ago. What kind of species was this? Another report caught his attention. A Sirathi intelligence officer named Kethra had been assigned to study human history. Her job was to find weaknesses in human psychology that could be exploited. What she found instead nearly drove her mad. Earth history was a horror show. The humans had spent their entire existence killing each other. They had fought thousands of wars on their home planet alone. They had created weapons that could destroy cities in an instant. They had invented new ways to cause suffering that made Sirathi torture methods look gentle. Kethra calculated the total number of humans who had died in wars throughout their history. The number was higher than the entire current population of the Sirathi Dominion. Humans had killed more of their own kind than all the Sirathi who had ever lived, and they had done it to each other. Brother against brother, nation against nation, for land, for resources, for ideas, for reasons that made no sense at all. They had spent 10,000 years learning how to kill things exactly like themselves. Kethra included a note at the end of her report. We are not fighting a young species. We are fighting the survivors of an endless civil war. They have been at war since before they could write. Combat is in their blood. It is in their bones. It is who they are. Velketh read those words and felt true fear for the first time. The war continued. The Sirathi kept winning battles, but the cost kept rising. Human ships that should have been easy targets fought like cornered animals. Human colonies that should have surrendered chose death instead. Every victory felt more like a defeat. Admiral Chen kept adapting. She developed new tactics that no species had ever used before. She found weaknesses in Sirathi shields that the Sirathi themselves did not know existed. She predicted enemy movements with accuracy that seemed almost supernatural. Commander Thalvex requested reinforcements. Then he requested more reinforcements. Then he requested permission to use weapons that had been banned by the Galactic Council. The High Council refused. They told him to win with what he had. They still believed victory was certain. Velketh finally reached the hidden world of the Conclave of Ashes. He landed his ship in a valley surrounded by mountains older than most civilizations. He walked toward the ancient temple, where the eldest beings in the galaxy waited. He needed answers. He needed to know what the Sirathi were really fighting. Behind him, far across the stars, the war raged on. Humans and Sirathi killing each other in the darkness of space. Ships burning, soldiers dying, worlds falling. But Velketh now understood something that the High Council did not. The humans were not trying to win this war. They were not fighting for territory or resources or pride. They were fighting the way they had always fought, the way their ancestors had fought for 10,000 years. They were fighting to end it, quickly, decisively, completely, because humans knew something that other species did not. They knew what happened when wars went on too long. They knew the true cost of endless conflict, and they would do anything, sacrifice anything, to make the fighting stop, even if it meant destroying everyone who stood against them. Velketh climbed the steps of the temple. The answers he sought were inside. The truth about humanity. The truth about the thrill. The truth about why humans never lost. He was about to learn why that knowledge had been hidden from the galaxy for 12,000 years. The temple was dark and cold. Velketh walked through halls that had been built before his species learned to make fire. The walls were covered in symbols he could not read, warnings in languages that had been dead for 100,000 years. At the center of the temple, he found them. The conclave of ashes. There were 7 of them, each from a different ancient species. They sat in a circle around a pool of still water that glowed with soft blue light. Their bodies were old beyond imagination. Their eyes held the weight of millennia. The one called the Archivist was the eldest of them all. No one knew what species the Archivist had once been. That species had died out so long ago that even its name had been forgotten. Now the Archivist was just a shape in the darkness, a voice that echoed through the ages. "You have come to ask about the humans," the Archivist said. It was not a question. Velketh bowed low. "Yes, Ancient One. My people are at war with them. I need to understand what we are fighting." The other members of the conclave shifted in their seats. Some of them made sounds that might have been laughter or might have been sorrow. It was hard to tell. "Your people have made a terrible mistake," the Archivist said. "But you already know that. You would not be here otherwise." "I found records," Velketh said. 17 wars, 17 human victories. Species that should have crushed them were destroyed instead. And then there is the message I received. About the Threll. The name hung in the air like a curse. The members of the conclave grew very still. "Sit," the Archivist commanded. "What I am about to tell you has been hidden from the galaxy for 12,000 years. It is hidden because the truth is too dangerous, too frightening. Most species could not handle it." Velketh sat on the cold stone floor. His hearts were beating fast. "You believe humans are a young species," the Archivist began. "You believe they discovered space travel only 400 years ago. You believe they are newcomers to the galactic stage." "Yes," Velketh said. "That is what all the records say. The records lie." Velketh felt the blood drain from his face. "Humans are not young," the Archivist continued. "They are old. Older than the Sirathi. Older than the Moldrani. Older than almost every species in the galaxy. They are one of the first races, seeded across the stars when the universe itself was young." "That is impossible," Velketh whispered. "Is it? Think about what you have seen. Their adaptability, their instinct for combat, their refusal to surrender even when defeat is certain. Do these seem like the traits of a young species still learning its place in the universe?" Velketh could not answer. The first races spread life throughout the galaxy billions of years ago. They created the foundations of civilization. They guided younger species toward peace and wisdom. Most of them eventually evolved beyond physical form. They became beings of pure thought, pure energy. They left the material universe behind. But the humans did not, Velketh said slowly. "No. The humans were different. They were seated on a small planet in a remote arm of the galaxy. A planet that was never meant to support intelligent life. A death world." The Archivist waved one ancient limb, and images appeared above the glowing pool. Velketh saw a blue and green planet, beautiful from a distance. Then the images zoomed closer, and he saw the truth. Earthquakes that shattered continents. Volcanoes that blackened the sky. Ice ages that lasted 10,000 years. Asteroids that wiped out 90% of all life. Diseases that killed millions. Predators that hunted in packs. Storms that could level mountains. Earth was not a cradle of life. It was a crucible. A furnace. A testing ground where only the strongest could survive. The humans were cut off from the other first races, the Archivist said. Whether by accident or design, we do not know. They were alone on their death world for millions of years. While the other first races evolved toward peace and transcendence, the humans evolved toward survival. They became warriors, Velketh said. They became something more than warriors. They became war itself. Conflict is written into their DNA at the deepest level. Every human carries within them the accumulated tactical memory of 10,000 generations of fighters. They do not learn warfare. They remember it. The images above the pool changed. Now Velketh saw humans fighting, not against aliens, against each other. He saw primitive humans with stone weapons killing each other over hunting grounds. He saw ancient armies clashing with swords and spears. He saw trenches filled with mud and blood. He saw mushroom clouds rising over burning cities. He saw a species that had never known a single generation of true peace. This is their history, the Archivist said. Endless war. Brother against brother. Tribe against tribe. Nation against nation. They have been perfecting the art of killing for longer than most species have existed. How are they not extinct? Velketh asked. Because they are also more adaptable than any species in the galaxy. Every challenge makes them stronger. Every defeat teaches them. Every war adds new knowledge to their collective memory. They cannot be broken because they have already broken themselves 1,000 times and rebuilt. Velketh thought about Admiral Chen, her impossible tactics, her ability to predict Scyrethi movements, her crews that sang while their ships burned. Now it all made terrible sense. What happened to the Threll? He asked. The archivist was silent for a long moment. The other members of the conclave looked away. The Threll were a proud species, the archivist finally said. 12,000 years ago they discovered the human homeworld. They saw a primitive species still using nuclear weapons and fossil fuels. They saw easy prey. New images appeared above the pool. Threll warships descending on Earth. The beginning of what should have been a simple conquest. The Threll attacked the first human colony ship to leave Earth. They killed 10,000 humans. They thought this would frighten the rest into submission. It did not, Velketh said quietly. No. The humans responded in a way no one expected. They did not surrender. They did not negotiate. They did not even hesitate. Within 1 generation, they had reverse-engineered Threll technology. Within 2 generations, they had surpassed it. Within 3 generations, they had built a fleet that matched the Threll navy. The images showed human ships, crude and ugly compared to Threll elegance, but numerous beyond counting. Velketh saw the fear in the eyes of Threll commanders as they realized what they had awakened. The war lasted 50 years. When it ended, the Threll were gone. Not defeated, not conquered. Gone. The humans erased them from the galaxy. Every ship, every colony, every world. They did not stop until there was nothing left. Velketh felt sick. How is this not known? How has this been hidden? Because the humans themselves chose to forget. After the war, they looked at what they had done and felt shame. They did not want to be the species that committed genocide. So they buried the records. They rewrote their own history. They pretended to be a young, peaceful species just learning to explore the stars. But they are not peaceful. No. They want to be. They desperately want to be. But when something threatens them, all that pretense falls away. The old instincts take over. And then they become what they have always been. The archivist leaned forward, ancient eyes gleaming in the darkness. Your people have awakened something that should have been allowed to sleep, Ambassador. The humans will not stop until this war is over. And their definition of over is very different from yours. Velketh stood on shaking legs. He had come looking for answers. He had found nightmares instead. What can I do? He asked. How can I save my people? Surrender, the archivist said simply. Immediately and completely. It is your only hope. Velketh thought about the High Council. Their pride. Their certainty of victory. They would never accept surrender. Not until it was too late. He ran from the temple, desperate to reach his ship. He had to send a message. He had to warn them. But deep inside, he already knew the truth. The Scyrethi had declared war on something ancient and terrible. Something that had been killing since before the stars were named. Something that could not be stopped, only survived. And survival meant surrender. Nothing else would work. The message from Velketh reached the Scyrethi High Council 3 days after he left the temple. He told them everything. The first races, the death world, the Threll, the 12,000 years of hidden history. He begged them to surrender before it was too late. The High Council laughed at him. Fear has broken our ambassador's mind, said the Grand Marshal. He sees ghosts and legends where there are only weak enemies waiting to be conquered. We have won every engagement, said the Minister of War. Human space is burning. Their fleet is scattered. Victory is within our grasp. Surrender to a species we outnumber 10 to 1, said the council leader. Impossible. Such cowardice would shame our ancestors for 1,000 generations. The message was deleted. Velketh was removed from his position. A warrant was issued for his arrest on charges of treason and spreading enemy propaganda. The war continued, but the war had already begun to change. Admiral Nora Chen received word of Velketh's message to his government. Her intelligence officers had intercepted it. She read every word, and when she finished, she closed her eyes and let out a long breath. So they know, she thought. They know what we are, and they are still fighting. She had hoped it would not come to this. She had pulled her fleet back in the early weeks, accepting defeat after defeat, trying to show the Sci-Rathi that humans could be reasonable. She had given them every chance to stop, every opportunity to choose peace. They had refused. Now there was no choice left. The humans would have to end this war the old way, the hard way, the way their ancestors had ended every war since the dawn of time. She gave the order. The human fleet stopped retreating. It stopped hiding. It stopped holding back. What happened next would haunt Sirathi nightmares for generations. Chen's forces executed battle maneuvers that should have been impossible. Her ships moved with perfect coordination, each vessel knowing exactly where to be without any visible communication. Sirathi commanders watched in horror as their carefully planned formations fell apart against tactics they had never seen before. It was as if the humans could predict every Sirathi move before it happened. On the ground, General Marcus Webb led his soldiers in a campaign that rewrote the rules of warfare. His troops adapted to Sirathi tactics within hours. Strategies that had taken the Sirathi centuries to develop were countered in days. Weapons that had never been defeated were defeated again and again. The Sirathi could not understand how this was possible. They did not know that human soldiers carried the memories of 10,000 generations in their blood. They did not know that every battle their ancestors had ever fought was written into their DNA, waiting to be accessed when needed. Human scientists worked just as fast. A team of researchers cracked the secret of Sirathi shield technology in 6 days. It had taken the Sirathi themselves 200 years to develop those shields. Another team found a weakness in Sirathi communication systems that had never been discovered in 5,000 years of Sirathi warfare. The humans were not just fighting. They were learning, improving, evolving, getting stronger with every engagement. But here was the thing that confused the Sirathi most of all. Even as the humans started winning, even as they began pushing the Sirathi back, they kept offering peace. Every major victory was followed by a diplomatic message. Every destroyed fleet was met with an offer of negotiation. The humans would crush a Sirathi force and then immediately ask if the Sirathi wanted to stop fighting. Commander Thalvex found this behavior incomprehensible. "They are winning," he said to his officers. "Why do they keep asking us to surrender? Are they mocking us?" His officers had no answer. The truth was something Thalvex could not have understood even if someone had explained it to him. The humans were not offering peace out of weakness. They were offering it out of mercy. They knew what they were capable of. They knew what would happen if this war continued. And they did not want to do what they would have to do if the Sirathi kept fighting. Velketh, hiding on a remote moon to escape arrest, finally understood this. He watched the war reports and saw something that no other Sirathi seemed to notice. The humans hated this. They were magnificent at it. They were perfect at it. But they hated it with every fiber of their being. He saw recordings of human soldiers after battles. They did not celebrate. They did not boast. They sat in silence, staring at nothing. Some of them cried. Some of them held each other. All of them looked like beings who had just done something terrible and necessary. He saw Admiral Chen give a speech to her fleet after destroying a Sirathi armada. There was no joy in her voice, no pride, just exhaustion and a quiet kind of grief. "We did what we had to do," she said. "Now let us hope they accept peace so we do not have to do it again." The Sirathi High Council did not accept peace. They sent more ships, more soldiers, more weapons. The humans destroyed them all. The turning point came at the Battle of Keth Vera Prime. The Sirathi had gathered their remaining fleet for one final assault. 40,000 warships against 12,000 human vessels. The largest battle in the history of the war. It lasted 4 days. When it was over, 32,000 Sirathi ships were burning wreckage. The humans had lost 3,000. The math should have been impossible. But the humans had long ago stopped caring about what should be possible. After the battle, Velketh received a recording that had been smuggled out by a Sirathi prisoner of war. It showed the aftermath of the fighting. It showed something that broke his heart. Human soldiers were walking among the wreckage of Sirathi ships, looking for survivors. When they found wounded Sirathi, they treated their injuries. When they found dead Sirathi, they gathered the bodies and arranged them carefully in rows. Then the humans held a ceremony. They buried the Sirathi dead with full military honors. They spoke words of respect for their fallen enemies. Some of them wept. These creatures, Velketh thought, these impossible creatures who could have killed us all, they are crying for us. He finally understood the terrible truth about humanity. They were not monsters. They were not mindless killing machines. They were beings who felt deeply, who loved fiercely, who wanted nothing more than to live in peace. But they had been born on a death world that never gave them that choice. They had been forged in endless war because it was the only way to survive. They had become perfect warriors not because they wanted to be, but because the universe had demanded it of them. And now, when they were forced to fight again, they fought with everything they had. They fought to end wars quickly, decisively, completely. Not because they enjoyed destruction, but because they knew the alternative was worse. Prolonged war meant prolonged suffering. The humans understood this in their bones. So when they fought, they did not hold back. They ended conflicts as fast as possible, no matter the cost. It was the most terrible kind of mercy imaginable. Velketh sent one final message to the High Council. He did not beg this time. He did not argue. He simply stated facts. The humans will accept our surrender, he wrote. They do not want to destroy us. They want to stop fighting. But if we do not surrender, they will do what they have always done. They will end the war their way, and we will join the Threll in extinction. The choice is ours, but choose quickly. They are running out of patience, and so am I. 3 days later, the Sirathi Dominion surrendered. The war was over, but for Velketh, the real journey was just beginning. The surrender ceremony took place on a human station orbiting a neutral world. Representatives from both species gathered in a great hall decorated with the flags of 100 different planets. Cameras broadcast the event across the galaxy. Velketh had been pardoned by the new Sirathi government. The old High Council had been removed from power after the defeat, and the beings who replaced them understood that Velketh had been right all along. They asked him to serve as their chief diplomat to humanity. He accepted. He stood at the back of the hall and watched the human delegation enter. Admiral Nora Chen led them. She wore a simple black uniform with no medals or decorations. Her face showed no emotion as she walked to the podium. The treaty was signed. The war was officially over. The Sirathi Dominion would pay no tribute, surrender no territory, give up no ships. The humans asked for nothing except peace. This confused many of the Sirathi observers. They had expected harsh terms. They had expected punishment. Instead, the humans seemed almost eager to forget the war had ever happened. After the ceremony, Velketh requested a private audience with Admiral Chen. To his surprise, she agreed immediately. They met in a small room overlooking the stars. Chen poured 2 glasses of a human drink called whiskey and handed one to Velketh. He tasted it carefully. It burned his throat, but not unpleasantly. You tried to warn your people, Chen said. I read your messages. You understood what we were before anyone else. I found the truth, Velketh said. About the first races, about Earth, about the Threll. Chen nodded slowly. The Conclave of Ashes. They tell that story to species who are wise enough to ask. Most never do. The story they told me, Velketh said carefully. Was it true? Chen took a long drink of her whiskey before answering. Most of it. We are old. Older than we pretend to be. Our world was hard in ways that other species cannot imagine. And yes, we destroyed the Threll. We burned their civilization to ashes because they would not stop attacking us. Do your people know this? Some of us. The ones who need to know. The rest live happier lives without that weight on their shoulders. She looked out at the stars. We are not proud of what we did. We are not proud of what we can do. But we remember. Somewhere in our minds, in our blood, we always remember. Velketh set down his glass. I have to ask you something. One question that has haunted me since I first learned the truth. Ask, why? Why do humans always win? Is it just your history, your genetics, your death world evolution? Those things explain why you are good at war. They do not explain why you are undefeated. Chen smiled. It was a sad smile, full of old pain. You want to know the real reason? Yes. She turned to face him fully. Her eyes were dark and deep, and Velketh felt like he was looking into an ocean of memory stretching back 10,000 years. The real reason humans have never lost a Galactic Council war is not our tactics. It is not our adaptability. It is not our numbers or technology or genetic memory. Those things make us dangerous. They do not make us unbeatable. Then what does? We have already fought the worst enemy we will ever face. Chen paused. Ourselves? Velketh blinked. I do not understand. Every war in human history was a civil war, Chen said. Think about what that means. We spent 10,000 years fighting beings exactly like ourselves. Beings who thought the way we thought. Who adapted the way we adapted. Who knew every trick we knew because they invented those tricks alongside us. She walked to the window and pressed her hand against the cold glass. When you fight yourself, you cannot rely on your enemy being different. You cannot exploit strange psychology or unfamiliar tactics. Every advantage you have, they have too. Every weakness you can attack, they can attack in you. It is the purest form of warfare, the hardest, the most brutal, and you survived it, Velketh said quietly. We did more than survive. We perfected it. By the time we reached the stars, we had already fought every battle imaginable. We had already faced every strategy, every tactic, every weapon. There was nothing new under any sun for us. Chen turned back to face him. Aliens are easy, Ambassador. I do not say this to insult you. I say it because it is the truth. Your species thinks differently than we do. You have predictable patterns. You have weaknesses you do not even know about because you have never faced beings who think exactly like you. But humans have. Yes. Every generation, every century, every millennium. We have been at war with ourselves for so long that we know exactly how to beat creatures like us. And if we can beat ourselves, we can beat anyone. Velketh sat in silence for a long moment. The weight of her words pressed down on him like a physical force. That is terrifying. He finally said, Yes. Chen agreed. It is. We know that. It is why we want peace so badly. We know what we are capable of. We know the darkness that lives inside us. We have seen it. We have lived it. We have drowned in it. She finished her whiskey and set the glass aside. We do not fight because we enjoy it. We fight because sometimes there is no other choice. And when we fight to end it as quickly as possible. Because we know what happens when wars drag on. We know the cost of endless conflict better than any species in the galaxy. Velketh stood and walked to stand beside her at the window. Together they looked out at the stars. Two beings from different worlds trying to understand each other. What happens now? He asked. Now we try to be better than our nature. We build. We create. We make art and music and love. We raise children and tell them stories about heroes who chose peace. We do everything we can to be more than what evolution made us. Do you succeed? Chen was quiet for a long time before answering. Sometimes, not always. The darkness is always there, waiting. But we try. Every day, every generation, we try. That is all we can do. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small book. It was old and worn, its pages yellow with age. A gift, she said, pressing it into his hands. Human poetry. Some of our finest words, written by beings who understood both the darkness and the light inside us. Velketh took the book carefully, as if it were made of glass. Read it, Chen said. Learn who we really are. Not the warriors, not the destroyers, the dreamers, the poets, the ones who looked at all our violence and said no, we can be more than this. She smiled one last time, and there was hope in it now alongside the sadness. That is the real reason we have never lost a war, Ambassador. It is not because we are monsters. It is because we are the only species that knows exactly how monstrous we can become. And we fight, every single day, to make sure no one ever has to find out. She left him standing at the window, holding the book of poetry in his hands. Later that night, alone in his quarters, Velketh opened the book to a random page. He read the words written there, words from a human who had lived and died thousands of years ago. We have met the enemy, and he is us. He read the line again and again until the meaning sank into his bones. Humanity had never lost a war because they had already won the hardest war of all. The war against themselves. The war to remain human in the face of everything that tried to make them less. Velketh closed the book and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, humans were laughing and crying and creating and dreaming, fighting their eternal battle against the darkness within, and winning. Every single day, winning. The Sirathi would never wage war again. Not because they had been conquered, but because they finally understood. Humanity was not their enemy. Humanity had never been anyone's enemy, except their own, and that made them the most dangerous and the most beautiful species in the galaxy, both at once, forever. It was the most human thing Velketh had ever learned.